What's going on, guys? K-Pine here and welcome back. And in this video, I'll be featuring the team that carried me to expert rank and top 150 in the world. Shadow Dragonair Lead with Skarmory and Lanturn in the back. Now, this is a pretty toxic team, but it's a very effective one at that. Shadow Dragonair is an incredibly strong Pokemon enforcing switch or shield advantage, but in this case, we're going for switch advantage, even if that means going down shields, as our backline thrives off of having alignment, especially since Dragonair and Skarmory form an almost perfect core with each other. The reason why I'm running Skarmory and Lanturn as my back two mons is for an opposing Skarmory or Vigoroth Lead. Dragonair has a pretty bad matchup against both of those, and these two mons in the back give me a little flexibility to bounce around when needed. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, into the first battle, we lead Shadow Dragonair into Vigoroth. Fairly neutral lead here, but in order to take that switch advantage that we are looking for, we are going to have to go down both shields in this matchup. My opponent does overfarm. I'm going to get my move off first, but it does not matter since they are going to reach two body slams either way, forcing both of my shields. So body slam number one coming through, body slam number two will get my second shield. And from here, I can just Dragon Breath this Vigoroth all the way down, which I do, and now I have a lot of energy and switch advantage, of which they have a Jellicent in the back. So here, all I need to do is just stay in, let my Shadow Dragonair go down, and I will be able to align my Lanturn to this Jellicent. So Shadow Dragonair putting in a ton of work, already doing a ton of damage to the bulky Jellicent, and now my Lanturn is able to come in and apply pressure with those sparks. My opponent swaps out into a Shadow Dragonair, and first battle, very good matchup of this alignment dependent back line. We force switch, able to get our Lanturn on the Jellicent, which has a very good matchup, and our Skarmory on their Shadow Dragonair, which also has a very good matchup. And now the Skarmory I have is a very, very poor Skarmory. So I'm not going to be able to survive this Aqua Tail to get off that Sky attack. And honestly, that's fine just because my Lanturn will be able to close out anyways. But generally, even if you have a somewhat decent Skarmory, you will be able to survive that Aqua Tail and get off your next Sky attack. Again, mine, really poor IVs, was not able to, but we're still able to take the win. Next battle. Lead Dragonair into Shadow Poliwrath, and here we are going to make sure we throw first before their Icy Wind. Icy Wind is 7 counters, so we are going to make sure we throw after 13 Dragon Breaths, which is 1 turn before their potential Icy Wind. Here my opponent goes for the counter down, and we get to punish them as we reach another body slam. That's why with Shadow Poliwrath, it's very crucial you throw on proper timing. And if you're like, K-Pine, how do I throw after 13 Dragon Breaths? Like, how do I count it? It's like, well, you don't necessarily need to count from the start. It's 12 Dragon Breaths to body slam and Aqua Tail. So all you need to do is just go 1 Dragon Breath over. When your charge move meter is full, just throw 1 more Dragon Breath, and that will be 13 Dragon Breaths for good timing. And now in this matchup, we force that switch advantage as our opponent swaps out, and we get to align our Skarmory to the Clodsire, so our Lanturn does not have to see it. Here in this matchup, I'm going to go for the Sky attack first, and then Brave Bird second. The Sky attack right there would not quite KO, but the Brave Bird does, and our opponent lets it go. We spark down the Poliwrath, and in comes a Claydol, a Mud Slap Claydol, recently buffed, since Mud Slap does more damage and generates more energy, but nonetheless, not going to be able to Mud Slap down my Lanturn in time, and my opponent concedes the match. GG's. Next battle. Now this is that lead I was talking about. Skarmory is very bad. It's one of those reasons why I chose this backline over something heavily alignment dependent, like some other potential Pokemons. It gives me the chance to be double weak to the Skarmory. So I'm going to stay in, and I'm going to throw that Aqua Tail. Here, if I throw another Aqua Tail, the Skarmory will be able to survive it and force both shields. And at that point, it's going to be very, very tough for me to come back from it. So I'm going to shield up their first Sky Attack and catch a move and look for a catch of their second move onto my Skarmory. Unfortunately, I'm unsuccessful on this one. And my opponent brings in a Whiscash. So it's very fortunate that we're able to bait out the Whiscash, so our Lanturn doesn't have to see it. And generally, like how I'm saying, you want to stay in with the Shadow Dragonair the entire time, so you can force switch advantage. A Skarmory Lead, all your opponent has to do is shield once, and they'll be able to take switch. Even if you shield twice and they shield once, they can still take switch, and now you're just in a very, very poor position. So that's why I like running this back line, because it gives me a little more flexibility to deal with that. But now in this matchup, Sableye comes back in, firing off a foul play against my Lanturn. Lanturn tanks that no problem. And now I'm going for a Surf for some chip damage. I want to see if I can get this Surf off and then go for a little bit of a Spark down. I go for a switch to try and catch a move onto my Dragonair. My opponent shows good patience, and now they swap into their Skarmory, but I'm able to reach a move, and now this is very close. This is a Brave Bird, and I have a decision to make. Hopefully I can just barely survive the Brave Bird to get the Spark down, since the Sableye did store a move, but not able to, and my opponent's able to take that one. GG's. Next battle. Facing a Lickitung Lead, my opponent swaps into a Poliwrath, and I have a perfect answer for the Poliwrath in Spark Lanturn. Lickitung. If your opponent stays in with the Lickitung Lead, you just stay in with your Dragonair, and it's very similar to the Vigoroth matchup, where you have to give up 2 shields, and they'll give up 1, and you'll force switch advantage. And Lickitung's the same with that. But the good news about it is that, again, you leave that Lickitung Lead matchup with almost a full move stored and that all important switch advantage. Now in this battle, I'm able to reach 2 Surfs against the Lickitung, bring it down very low, and from here, I'm actually going to bring in my Skarmory instead of my Shadow Dragonair. Skarmory is an absolute wall to the energy from Lickitung, while the energy would be threatening to the Dragonair instead. Now my opponent swaps into a Medicham, and this is a power-up punch Medicham, and that is really not good. So I'm going to fire off the Sky Attack as soon as I get it to force that shield from my opponent, and now I'm going to swap into my Dragonair. I don't hit all the bubbles on that with the Skarmory just because I'm like, they're going to shield this no matter what, so it really doesn't matter. Now I'm going to swap into my Shadow Dragonair, and this fast move pressure is way too much, so I am going to have to give up my shields to those power-up punches, but that is alright because it looks like my Shadow Dragonair is just barely going to be able to hang on and reach this last Body Slam in time, which we do. Down goes the Medicham, and like I said before, Skarmory is a wall to this energy from the Lickitung, so we will be able to close it out. They are going to reach 2 more Body Slams, but again, it will not be enough. First Body Slam goes through, second Body Slam gonna land right here. And just 2 more Steel Wings are able to finish it off. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Shadow Dragonair against Whiscash. Now this is a pretty good matchup for us, and this is where we want to see it, as we do not want it on our Lanturn. Now the reason why this is an even better matchup than any other leads is we don't need to shield every single move the Whiscash throws, because we're not in any threatening position to get farmed down. So we can actually let the first Mud Bomb go, fire off this next Body Slam, and if your opponent shields, you match shields. If they no shield, then you just shield yourself and farm all the way down. In this moment, my opponent, they decide to swap out into a Gligar, so I'm going to stay in, throw an super effective Aqua Tail, which does get their shield, and now I can just bring in my Skarmory to absolutely shut down this Gligar. Both of their moves that they go for, Dig and Aerial Ace, are both resisted, So again, Skarmory is a wall to Gligar's moveset. That is if they're running the standard one. If they're running Night Slash, then yeah, they can hit for neutral, but non-stab Night Slash from Gligar against a Pokemon like Skarmory does not do very much damage at all. So we just land that Sky Attack, we farm all the way down. My opponent comes back in with the Whiscash, I will be able to take it out with the Sky Attack unless they decide to give up their final shield, which they do not. And in comes a Skeledirge, so we swap into our Lanturn, and again, that RPS alignment just so good for us. Shadow Dragonair putting the team on its back. Next battle, as we get into the expert set, fantastic lead into Lanturn, my opponent swaps into Jumpluff, and I have the perfect response in Skarmory, which gets to wall their entire moveset. So you notice what I did there. Since I have the perfect answer for the Jumpluff in my Skarmory, I'm actually going to bank a move on my Shadow Dragonair first for a potential CMP situation where I could waste my opponent's energy or force a shield from them. So I bank that move, swap into my Skarmory, land a Sky Attack, and now I'm just going to farm all the way down to have some energy for the opposing Lanturn. And I'm actually going to do something a little unorthodox in this matchup, right? Since I realized that, hey, my Skarmory could be useful, here I'm going to go for this Brave Bird and then swap into my own Shadow Dragonair. I don't want them to spark down my Skarmory and potentially get a lot of energy to threaten my Dragonair, so I'm going to force that swap out and save my Skarmory for later. And here, my opponent actually staying in to fire off some energy. So it's like, oh, they're got to be very weak to the Dragonair. So I actually do Shield of Surf to preserve some health. And they have Skeledirge in the back. So they are ABA weak to it. First Aqua Tail does get a shield. They're forced to throw a move. Otherwise, I will get to another Aqua Tail. But that's perfectly okay, as we do have the Lanturn. Lanturn comes in, and my opponent concedes the match. GG's. Next battle. We lead Dragonair into another Shadow Poliwrath. So remember, just throw after 13 Dragon Breaths in this matchup, which we do right here. Body Slam will most likely be getting the shield from my opponent. If it doesn't, we just shield and farm down, and if it does, we just shield in return anyways. Shielding Shadow Dragonair, that's the name of the game. They do go for the Icy Wind, and you've got to throw this Body Slam right away. You don't want to risk any bit of lag, stuttering, or not being able to get off the move. You just want to throw it right away, get rid of the Poliwrath, or force their final shield, which we're able to do. And then they give up switch by swapping into a Guzzlord. So we're able to counter swap with our Skarmory. And here I overfarm a little bit. I wasn't quite sure if a Brave Bird would kill from this range. Looking back at the Guzzlord's HP, it definitely would have. So a little bit of a misplay right there, letting them get off that last move. But down goes Guzzlord either way. In comes Poliwrath. I'm just going to get rid of it with this Sky Attack, and hopefully it's something that my Lanturn can close out against in the back, and it's a Clodsire. And this is going to be very, very close. And it's a Mudshot Clodsire, which is even worse for me. But I am up a shield. So if they go straight Earthquake, I may just barely be able to hang on. So I let it go, knowing that I would have to take one. But my opponent baits with the Stone Edge. They make it very, very easy for me in that case, as now they don't have a win condition left. They concede the match. GG's. Next battle, we lead Shadow Dragonair into Lickitung. See if this Lickitung lead does stay in, and they do. So this is gonna, like I explained earlier, this is very similar to the Vigoroth lead. I do overfarm here, just in case my opponent tries to catch on something if I was to throw right away. And again, I'm overfarming here because I am going to give up that shield. So first Body Slam does land. But my second Body Slam, I am going to throw right away, since this is lethal and is on the CMP tie. So my opponent wants to get off their move, they will have to give up their first shield, excuse me, which they do. And in return, I will shield up myself and just Dragon Breath all the way down. If your opponent stays in with the Lickitung, you will be able to Dragon Breath all the way down. This one safe swaps into a Shadow Gligar, and again, Gligar meets its worst nightmare in the Skarmory. So I'm going to load up on energy, go for the Sky Attack. Sky Attack does land, and now I'm just going to commit to the Steel Wing down. Gligar does reach one more move, but Skarmory able to tank that, no problem. Steel Wing down that Gligar, and now they have an Azumarill in the back. So again, Shadow Dragonair able to force that switch advantage, and our back line got the exact alignment it wanted to. I'm going to force swap into my Lanturn, reach this Surf to take out the Lickitung, and now it's just Lanturn against the Azu, and my opponent concedes the match. Jeez. Next battle, we lead Shadow Dragonair into Guzzlord. So this one against Dragon Leads, if it's like against another Shadow Dragonair lead, if it's against a Dragonite lead, or any of those situations, you don't throw a move and you just Dragon Breath all the way down. You will, and that way you get to leave with a move and switch advantage. Guzzlord Lead, it's a little different. It's HP total, and those Dragon Tails do quite a number to your Shadow Dragonair. So I do decide to throw a move there and bring in Skarmory. And now here I make a little bit of a risky play. They have a Guzzlord Lead. I'm banking on the fact that Lanturn is going to run through their back line. So I swap out, I spark down the Guzzlord to get a little bit of an energy advantage, but they end up being ABA strong to a Lanturn, and that is just quite unfortunate. Cloudsire does go for the Earthquake. I showed up properly. I'm going to overfarm some, go for a Surf. Surf does land on the Cloudsire, and they're able to reach another move. So I'm going to shield this up, overfarm, and go for yet another Surf. I'm hoping that that shield advantage will be enough to take care of the Cloudsire, but my opponent swaps out, and they have a Charger Bug in the back. So once I lost switch advantage against that Guzzlord, my opponent was able to get the alignment they needed as opposed to the alignment I needed. So a very tough matchup there. This is Exhibit A, why you always want to try and get that switch advantage with this team and this back line. Charger Bug is going to reach a discharge to take out my Lanturn, and here my only hope is that I'm able to Steel Wing down the Charger Bug in time so I can leave with move with energy to take out the Cloudsire, but my opponent swaps into the Cloudsire, forces me to waste my energy, and down goes my Skarmory. GG's my opponent. Next battle, Altaria Lead, and now this is a tough one as well, because an Altaria Lead, just due to its bulk, is going to be able to take switch advantage against a Shadow Dragonair. It just is. So I'm going to go for the Body Slam since I outpace, and then swap into my Skarmory to try and save my Shadow Dragonair for later, but they have the hardest answer to Skarmory in a Registeel. So I'm just going to go for the Brave Bird off the bat, right? Like, a Zapcan's going to KO it anyway, so might as well do the most damage I can. And now this is going to be a very tough matchup. Lost lead, hard countered on the swap. We're going to see what we can do. Down goes Skarmory, and now I'm just going to go, you know what? I'm going to go for energy on my Shadow Dragonair. So I'm going to shield up this move. It ends up just being the Focus Blast, so that's perfect. So now I can overfarm an absolute ton here. My opponent makes a very nice play. They're able to snipe my Dragonair with a move, forcing me to give up my last shield. And now I'm just kind of just hoping that my Lanturn can close it out. Go for Body Slam number 1, Body Slam number 2. Does take out the Altaria, my opponent saving their final shield for whatever they have in the back. And here, I'm looking to swap into my Lanturn right away, and it's an Azumarill, so this matchup is actually doable. Azumarill does make it to a Poliwrath that will land, and all I need to do here is just make sure I overfarm, right? I need to make sure I have enough energy so I can threaten that Registeel before it gets to another move. So I will go for the Thunderbolt, does get the shield, in comes the Registeel, And this Surf, like I said, over farming, make sure I have enough energy so I'm able to take out that Registeel before it reaches that lethal Focus Blast. Back in comes the Azu. Are we able to survive this play rough? We are. We reach a Thunderbolt and we're able to take the match. So a very, very tough matchup. We were just barely able to flip in our favor. GG's to my opponent. And that should secure a 4-1 in the set, bringing us up to expert rank. I did continue to use this team after reaching expert, and was able to make an even bigger climb with the team, reaching the top 150 in the world, as I mentioned earlier. So yes, this is a very strong team, and one I can highly recommend. With the buffs to fire types and lanterns being ever present, this is the season of dragons, and Shadow Dragonair shows exactly why that's the case. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.